Hi there. I'm doing some flower wall hugs today, and I thought I would show you very broad terms the way that I do the wall hugs. I usually or often do 2 wall hugs at a time because it takes a while to make the leaves and to make the flowers, and so if I do them 2 at a time, I seem to be able to do them a little faster. Here's the red one. Up here is a blue one, and what I do is I take one of my English paper piece flowers and position it on a background. I take a piece of rickrack. I don't know how long it is, but it's in the pattern. And then 2 leaves, which I have foundation paper pieced. I glue these down with little drops of glue, like just right around the edge. Press them well. These are pressed down with interfacing underneath. And this is glued. So when they're glued down to the background, I also make a backing and sandwich it together with some batting. So I do that for both of them. I have some binding cut. Here's the binding for the blue flower. There's some binding for this red one that I'm doing here. After I have them all ready to sew, then I can go to the sewing machine, and I've already used some red thread to do a blanket stitch around this red flower. Then I used yellow thread to just do a quilting stitch around the outside, so that it would show up, and a little quilting stitch right there. Right now I'm doing the blanket stitch around these leaves. For my blanket stitch, I usually use a 2.5 size stitch. I make sure that I have my correct foot on, and I have a video about doing the blanket stitch, or I've done several videos on the blanket stitch. But I always use the single blanket stitch. I set the needle to the far right, and I usually turn my tension down a little bit so that it does this more smooth stitch. And so that's what I'm doing here. I will do this for just 1, 2, 3 seconds. And after I finish this part, I can do this pretty quickly. Okay, I have finished stitching the outside of this with the blanket stitch, each of these leaves, and then I changed my foot and everything so that I could just do a straight quilting stitch down here and then up and then down, so that I went right along the dark lines here. And then if you start here and you go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, you can go right over here, over, so you don't have to stop. I usually knot on this end and knot on this end, and then I can pull my threads to the back, tie them off on each side. So the only other stitch, well, the main other stitching I have to do on top is to stitch this little piece of rickrack. So I thought I would show you how this is how I usually do rickrack. I have my feed dogs down, and I have the foot that's on the machine is an open toe foot, but it's the one that has the, it's closed in. Because when you do if you use the foot that's like this, use this foot, it's open here, and a lot of times it will get caught up in the edges. So I like to use the one that has a rounded edge. It doesn't get caught up. And I start up, usually at the top. You could start at the bottom. Put my needle down, pull my bobbin thread up, and if it doesn't come up, we're going to just do it again, because evidently it didn't get caught. Okay, there it is. All right, and now I've got a whole bunch of thread there. Not so great, but I am going to hold on to these threads momentarily, and then I'm going to just stitch a few stitches right there, and then I'm going to go down and just right along the edge. I am just doing a little bit of a quilting stitch, I guess you'd say. Sometimes you'll hear it go clunk clunk, like, I think it's just because it's picking up the... If you need to stop somewhere along the way and readjust so that it's more comfortable, that's fine to do too. And I'm just going to continue down until I get to the very bottom. I'm trying to make it even, but if it's not even, you can't see it because the thread matches the rickrack. When I get down to the very point down here, I'm going to come back up, and I'm going to come back up to where I started, bury my threads, and tie them on the back. That's how I do rickrack. Okay, I am now ready to do the quilting on the flower hug. And before I started, I pulled out some possible threads, and I like these I don't know, sort of cream colored threads that go with the background here. This background's kind of it just doesn't have a lot of color to it. So I thought, well, I could use Aurifil. This is Wonderfil. They're both 50 weight. They would be fine. But the problem is sometimes when you're quilting with a thread that matches your background, gets difficult because you can't see where you've quilted. So I thought, well, I found this Floriani, which is a much darker in areas. It's one of those colors, one of those threads that changes as it goes. So I really went back and forth. I'm not sure, but I'm going to try it, at least going around the outside. I always do around the outside of the flower and the leaves. And then I do free motion quilting right in through here. So I'm going to try it and we'll see how it goes. And if I don't like it, I can always switch back to put those on. So now for the free motion quilting, that's the easy part. Anyone can do this step. And it doesn't matter really where you start. I'm just going to start, somewhere here. I'll just start right up here. And I use my free motion or my quilting foot, and I have, my stitch is set at 2.5, whatever you'd like best. I usually try to go about 1/8 of an inch away from my flower. Then I'm going to put my needle in, pull the bobbin thread up, and I'm going to hold on to it as I start. And with the quilting foot on, it's very easy to just evenly stitch right around the flower. And so I will continue doing this until I go all the way around. When I get to the stem, I'll go down around the stem and then around the leaves so that I can do it all in one scoot around. And then I will stop, tie the threads, and decide about the free motion quilting. Okay, now I am doing the free motion quilting. I decided not to go with this darker thread because it just didn't seem right. It's too much, there's too much variation, and it's too far apart. So I have gone back to a sort of a shiny green colored thread, and it is hard to see while I'm quilting, but I'm just doing big spiral type things, and it will be fine. I did want to mention that I do set my chair down a little bit lower when I am doing free motion quilting, So, because it's easier for me to see. So if you have trouble with your free motion quilting, try setting your chair, if you can, a little lower. It's easier on your shoulders to see a little farther ahead. So let's get started. I've already knotted and done a few stitches. So now and notice I have my gloves on, because for me it's easier to use the gloves because I have more control of the fabric. And notice I have extra out here, extra batting. It's easier also if you have extra batting, extra fabrics. If you're trying to hold something and you're right up next to it, it's kind of difficult sometimes. I'm not going to keep this on through the whole time of my quilting, but I thought I would give you an idea. This will be what I'm going to do for the next, I don't know, probably 45 minutes or an hour. And then it will be time to put the binding on and do the rest of the buttons and anything else I want to add. So there you go. This is finishing up with quilting. Okay. We are working on I am working on a flower hug, and I've talked about the steps to making one of these. The next step after the quilting, I quilted this, and then I put on a binding, which I have done a video on how I do binding. And after the binding is on, then is the fun part. I get to put the beads and the buttons and the little ladybug, and each flower hug is a little bit different in the way I like to put different colored beads on or arrange them in a different manner. So when I have all of that finished, then it's time for the final part. And that is on the back of the flower hugs, where I have a little note that says, "Thinking of you, this wall hug has been made expressly for you to bring you a bit of joy and cheerfulness." And then it says, "Made by," I put my name and I put the date. I also have some backings that have a bigger note on it, but this one has just a short little note, just to tell somebody that you care about them. After it's all signed and I have the beads all done, I fold it up. I usually will try to find a plastic bag or something to protect it, and then it fits in one of these mailers from the USPS. I can address it and put it in the mail for a nominal price to send to whoever needs a little cheering up. So that is all the steps of making a flower wall hug for a friend.